Thank you. All right. I never once failed at making a light bulb. I just found out 99 ways not to make one. So this is a quote from Thomas Edison. I like it because it reminds me my 18 years journey in IoT. I started in this business back in 2004 when we were talking about 2G and how this machine-to-machine or telemetry was going to change the world. And here we are in 2023, going through different phases in terms of technology. And this is what I wanted to share today. I won't be talking too much about some of the latest technology stuff that we will be doing, but more how we will be helping this ecosystem to grow as an industry. And first, I wanted to go back a little bit one step backwards and to say, what is IoT? And what is a simple ways to explain what is IoT to somebody which has not been in this industry. To me, a simple way to talk about IoT would be to say that this is the internet in the 90s. I mean, some of you have been there, and there was so much excitement about what we could do with the internet, what we were expecting Amazon to be profitable in next year, and there were so many startups and new technology coming. In the end, it was a lot about the use case, and we've seen so many companies failing, the dot-com happened, then things cleaned up, and then it started again in a more, let's say, mature ways. Ultimately, now we are talking about digital transformation, which is at the core of everything, which in a way is good, I think, for what we are trying to do, because IoT is about collecting data, which has been offline, which gives insights to a customer to do something. What is this something? What does a customer want to achieve with IoT? That's where I think the whole question should be whenever we are trying to help our customer to use all this great technology. And in my experience, there is three things that the customer tries to achieve. The number one, which is very practical, is to reduce its operational costs. How does the technology help to review a way that we used to do things to make it better? Better customer service. We are in the world now that everything, the review from customers can be life or death for some business. So you need to have this instant information about how a business performs, and IoT can help this. Expansion of business model. Many companies were stuck into a product business. Lots of low-cost Chinese possibly came, disrupt them, and some are trying to move into services. How does IoT enable a traditional business to get into services? And yet, what do we see? And this is actually not from me, this is from McKinsey, which has documented it some years ago, that there is only 20 to 30% of the project which stops at POC and don't go into mass production. Why? Why so? What's going on that doesn't really get IoT to take off? There is this report, which I like, from Beachman Research, which is trying to identify where does IoT stop. What has been difficult for our customer, which got the project to fail, or just to grow not as much as we would expect. High cost of scaling is the number one. Lots of the projects I've been involved in, we deployed around 3 million devices in the world, generally start as engineering projects, having an ideas, but not necessarily having a view of what you want to achieve ultimately. And whenever you start to have something working, you realize you need to bring it into mass production, and is a company really capable of putting millions on the field? What do you do when you start to collect millions of endpoint data? Is your IT system capable of handling it? And how do you change your process internally to make it happen? All these questions are generally thought too late in a project. Pilot demonstrated a clear business ROI. We need, in any business school where you study change management, having this early win is explained as a key to get into change. And this is where generally IoT can fail if it doesn't demonstrate quickly how you can save money. I've been into some of this meeting, where there was a great engineering team showing what you can do, and then you have the CFO in the room raising the hand and say, hey, how much it costs, how much it helps to save. And generally, the project got stopped here. No clear strategy. Also, lots of these small experiments were not necessarily driven by the top head of the companies and more like as a fashionist ways of being in the transformation, digital transformation. So this is a lot of reason. Now, what I wanted to do after is to share some of the use cases that I've been involved in the last 18 years. The first 3 can be rated as unsuccessful. The next 3 are considered as successful, so I'm trying to show what was the application and what was the lesson learned. The first one, which was about LP1, it was 5 years ago around, where we wanted to come with super low-cost tag, very long life tag for anybody. Ultimately, it did fail because we were focusing a lot on the price, and the technology did not deliver its promise, and having a tag which could be used everywhere was not necessarily defining enough a case where a customer would be successful. Smart traffic management in the US, in a big city. So there was this huge project at the city level to manage at every corner what was happening. And ultimately, what did happen is there was some weak point which got introduced. The power supply of the system, which was a very expensive, very complicated system, started to fail during the summertime. It was costing between $500 and $1,000 to roll a truck in the city to do the change. Ultimately, this project costed millions in terms of maintenance because the end-to-end approach was not there. The customer introduced some weak points. There wasn't anybody to tell them how do we make it more robust. Car sharing. I got involved in automotive tier 1 projects. Very exciting. It's like, hey, wow, we are getting with the big guys who wants to get involved into car sharing. Dealing with the innovation team, which had a big budget to make something to happen. What we found ultimately, we got the solution to work, but the project got stuck at the innovation departments, and the company, which was fairly traditional, realized that they were not really geared into bringing these new services while their historical business was to sell cars. So the company was not ready to take this innovation and bring it to the next step. So these were for the less positive case, I would say. Now let's talk about what worked. Metering. Metering, we've seen, I think many of you must have been involved into metering because we've been talking about it for the last 20 years. There was very large deployment. What I've seen at the beginning of metering was lack of standard. The metering protocol were not standardized. Each region in different countries were doing whatever they wanted. And ultimately, there was some large-scale program at country level where the whole ecosystem was consulted and worked together to make the projects to happen. We can think about Italy, which deployed 28 million meters, or Sweden, or even India, which really needed to reduce its power loss, 40% loss between generation and distribution. And all this was about building the ecosystem and working end-to-end, having somebody fronting the deals and putting everybody together. Airport management, I like this case. It was a case in Germany where there was this experts which just could convince the airport authority that to give them all the bits and pieces, and we were able to track whatever was going on the airports, every vehicles which were moving with the sensors, a gateway, and domain experts which explain how do we bring the technology in such a congested area which is an airport. The last one was done in Hong Kong, elderly emergency, which happened during COVID. So lots of people passed away, unfortunately, in the elderly house. They were the most vulnerable people. We did put together a solution which allowed these elderly people to stay home, protected safely. And this could happen because the government got involved into defining the different building blocks, and there was a service approach. A service approach where somebody would lay out all the technology and front the government in terms of providing the system. So in here again, the takeaway is working with the ecosystem, working end-to-end, not focusing necessarily on price, but the return. What does the technology helps to solve? Is the problem big enough that it justifies to put IoT system, or do we just continue to do it in the same old ways? And I think some of the good news, which is some of the trend that I see when I talk to customer, is that this global transformation, maybe COVID helps, is happening. And now everybody is coming with initiatives, and the hype is starting to go a little bit down. I can see even in TTC today, we're inviting GSM, we're inviting Sigfox, we are not talking only about LoRaWAN, because we realize that if we don't work together, it won't happen. And the end-to-end solution is a focus and the way forward. One more thing, I wanted to share a little bit now what we do at Seasons Group, SG Wireless. So basically our mission, what we believe in, is to reduce the odds of getting into the 80%. With us, we will try to support our customer from the beginning of his journey into IoT until he sells millions of devices. We have a set of building blocks. So one of the building blocks is a hardware building blocks, which is this module. It's a multi-technology module, which is supporting GSM, wireless, LoRaWAN, Wi-Fi, BLE, which is also programmable. And this will be a way for any engineers to put together very quickly a solution so we can start to test. We will get involved very early in the design. We believe that a key of the success is to define what is the KPI, how do we make money with this solution with our customer, a bit like a consultative approach, which is key, setting the base, defining the products. Then we engage ourselves of 90 days to get your POC up and running, because the sooner that you test, the quicker you can see how it evolves in the real environments. And the most important, possibly, is scaling. We have 4 factories in the world, in China, Malaysia, UK, and Mexico. We can put in place any kind of supply chain, and we have this unique positioning. With our engineering team, we are capable of doing design at chip level. We completely control the supply chain, and we can produce and deliver an end product anywhere. Thank you, and I welcome any question. And by the way, we brought some hats and some gifts, so you please can come and collect it next to me. Any question?
Yes. Thank you very much. Since you're an expert in the field for a long time, I was wondering, what do you see as a big opportunity for the Things community?
A big opportunity?
Mm-hmm. No.
Well, but I think it's a change. This platform is great because it's a great opportunity to work together and to discuss about not necessarily how a piece of technology is great, but how does it integrate all together to make something good. In my view, it really has to be customer first. What do we want to achieve? And even if we try to, with what we do, we make it better than the others, fine. But what do we want to pursue together? So I hope with this show that a lot of alliance and working together will happen.
Yeah, I mean, we have a great venue. A lot of people are networking there, yes. So that's great. And the previous slide, I think you talked about 80% of IoT products fail.
Yes.
Can you tell a bit more about that?
For sure, but that's right. Generally, it's really at the POC. I mean, for us, generally, a customer cycle is around 18 months. From the time you give a component to the time you are manufacturing, 18 months. It's a super long marathon to survive.
POC is proof of concept, right?
Proof of concept, yes, yes, yes. And then getting the POC is generally the most important when you try to show that your project is viable. And that's where you get the hard talk between the engineers, the business people, the product people, and this is where often somebody dropped the ball.
Miscommunication.
Miscommunication or different alignment, not necessarily, and also a company culture. What you realize with IoT is once you start to get your data, if you don't change your workflow, if you don't change the people's mindset on how will this IoT data get your business or your historical ways of doing things change, then you fail. And that's where some companies are like, no, okay, it's too much risk. Like metering, for example. At the beginning of metering, from France, lots of people were afraid, like, okay, if you read the meter, what do you do with the guys who read the meter? And you have to lay them off. No, then you will have all the unions, which will be behind us. So we need to move step by steps and find a ways first to deal with the people. And the technology looks great. It seems to work fine, but we have our own internal problems. And to some extent, this is our roles also to find a solution for our customer to say, no, you don't need to fire your people. Maybe start simple and let's do some metering like it was done in UK, you know, where it was walk-by system. And there were still people reading the meter. It was semi-automatic. I think it was an interesting middle step.
Yeah, so people need some time for the adoption, right?
Which is really, in the end, IoT, it's about technology, it's about innovation, and there is so much documentation on how innovation failed, not because of the technology, but because of us as people to having our capabilities to feel secure with this new technology. And again, there was a very interesting case in France on metering. There was a meter called Linky, which has been, so I started in metering 20 years ago in India, where there was an emergency of reducing the loss of 40%. If you don't have power, you cannot support your economy. In France, we deployed it, and we charge a customer to basically use the meter, and then there was all these unions thinking, okay, the meter will spy what we do. It will burn, it's dangerous, etc. And in the end, there was some protest on the streets. We like protest in France.
So lack of trust.
Lack of trust, yes.
Is one of the reasons
fear of
can fail.
Fear of innovation, fear of technology, and ultimately finding how the technology brings some value. And this, I think, lots of companies struggle to explain how, with this new data, everybody will be beneficial. And it's not a way to track people, it's not a way to fire people, etc. So it's really about adoption.
And do you have any tips for people who are in that process right now? Okay, how do you make sure that the adoption process gets maybe easier? Or
But for me, it's really about focus less on the technology and before starting to talk about Sigfox is better than LoRa or NB-IoT, it's like, what do you want to do? What's your KPI? How do you make money with this? Let me help you to make money, because generally the money is the drivers. And we come with actually a model of hardware as a service. Moving from CapEx to OpEx will happen in IoT. Traditionally, it was a lot of you have big projects, you have a budget, you want to fund this budget with a project. We will be coming up in SD wireless with hardware as a service where we can sit with our customer and say, okay, you have a service model, we love it. We will be designing your product, manufacturing your products, and you will be paying us a monthly fee for that. So you don't need to feel the pain of the CapEx. We'll support you. We'll be your partner.
yeah, so what we heard in a previous speaker talking ease of mind, right? To make
Yes.
it easier.
Making easier, yeah. And adapting to our customers' business model is key.
Any questions from the audience? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.